Okay. So the next question regarding the writing sample that I provided. So for my writing sample, I did something a little different. Rather than submitting a sort of a piece that I'd worked on with someone else or myself, I wrote a landing page specifically for Supreme Optimization. The brief I gave was, take what this company does and translate it for the life sciences audience that they serve, which is exactly the work I'd be doing in this role. So I started with where I always start, with the reader in mind and the decision that they're trying to make. So the headline, turn complex science into clear, actionable decisions, came from thinking about what the audience actually needs. I structured around the problem first, then moving into the approach, and then the process. So the whole page is written to be scannable but credible, sort of short, clear sections. I wanted to show that I understand both the science side and the commercial side, and that I can write for an audience that sort of sees through anything that feels really like salesy. Essentially, I tried to write kind of the page that would make Supreme Optimization or your company proud to have me representing them as something that you could showcase. Okay, and walk you through my writing process. So as I sort of mentioned before, I always like to start with the audience. Before I write a single word on the page, I really want to know, who's reading this and what do they actually care about. What keeps them up at night? What problem are they trying to solve? Then I like to dig into source material, looking for the angle, the thing that really makes someone want to keep reading rather than just kind of skim it and close it, especially when attention spans are short these days. I learned a lot of this writing content from my own practice with the experience. I, done something or have something clinically accurate, something like sciatic, chronic headaches, migraines, but just being accurate alone doesn't really help anyone. So the question I kept asking was, what does this actually mean for this person's life? And so that instinct is sort of what I carry with me. So that starts with, again, outline. Really gives me a roadmap, where I'm going, where I'm starting, middle, end point, and make sure that we hit every exit or route along the way. Then the first draft is really about getting everything on paper and out of your head and onto the page, and then getting all the relevant information out. And then the second pass is really about making it look good, making it pleasurable to read. I use tools like Grammarly, to make sure everything is written properly. I read everything out loud before it's done, just so that it sounds, natural if someone who's reading it out loud. If not, I give it another pass. And then I usually like to also leave a little gap at the very end for a final review, because I think as a writer, you can get really into your own project and it sounds really good in your own head, but then always having a fresh set of eyes, or at least taking a step back and then coming back to it, really provides a really good perspective around your work. Okay, now moving into the scenario. So working with a client who needs ongoing content but hasn't provided specific direction, how would I go about identifying and suggesting relevant topics for them? So for this scenario, the first thing I would most likely do is audit what they've already published, understand the territory, the gaps, what they're working with. Then I would do my best to research and get into the audience's head. Here's something that I've learned from my own marketing. People don't, search for clinical terminology, right? They search for what they're feeling. Nobody kind of Googles lumbar radiculopathy. They Google, why does my leg go numb? So the gap between how experts talk and how real people think, I think that's really where the good content lives. So I would layer in some, after that, I'd layer in some good competitor research, probably go over some regulatory developments, industry news for life sciences, clients specifically, potentially also find if there are any other use cases or examples of what they're trying to do. Has it been done before? How well was it done before? And then I would take all that information and I would map it into something structured. Topics that, again, tie where the reader is to their journey, so the client can see the breakdown of the thinking, not just the list of ideas or the end result. So in my view, the most important role of content marketing in a client's overall marketing strategy is, I feel like at the top end I want to say trust, but I'll go a little bit deeper. I think one of the most important things is making complex things feel relevant to a real person's life or work, something that they can really identify with personally. That's definitely the core challenge in a lot of the writing I've done in the past. You can accurately explain the biomechanics and mechanics of chronic headaches, things like that, but accuracy isn't really, again, what makes someone make a change. What ends up making a change is connecting to that individual, right? It's the helping them see themselves in the content and having them connect directly to the content. So I think that's really what good content does for any brand, in life sciences, especially like with a sophisticated, I think in this day and age, often skeptical audience. They can tell when something is just thin, or if you're just trying to sell them something, versus content that really earns the trust by being genuinely useful. And I think that's how you earn the trust: is you are useful first and foremost. You treat them you then treat them like an intelligent audience, intelligent professionals. When you do that consistently, I think you really build credibility around, really build credibility that really influences decisions.